So, welcome to the Mindset Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Genevieve, and today I am so excited to introduce our special guest, a dear friend and colleague of mine, James Pearson. So, James is a mindset coach and human change specialist with a focus on helping high achieving professionals who, despite their external success, face inner challenges such as stress, conflict, and a lack of fulfillment. James draws on a variety of coaching techniques. He works with his clients to resolve past traumas, to overcome limiting beliefs, and to reconnect with their purpose in life. With over 25 years in the financial industry, James understands firsthand how career success can sometimes come at the cost of personal happiness. James's own struggles with depression and suicidal thoughts came to a head in 2014 when he found himself balancing the pressures of a senior role and becoming a new father. This pivotal moment pushed him to seek personal healing and to rediscover meaning in his life. Now, James is passionate about guiding others through similar transformations, helping them to shift their inner world to create a fulfilling external reality. His mission is to empower his clients to reconnect with their authentic selves and build lives filled with energy, purpose, and true fulfillment. So welcome, James. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. It's funny hearing you read that out, the warm and fuzzy feeling it gave me. I think when you're on mission, when you sort of truly connect with something. And yeah, it was nice to hear that because I think I wrote that a while ago and haven't really read it since. And I was like, oh, that still lands.
Yeah, that's your why.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, James, thank you for taking the time to be here with me today. So, tell us about you.
Oh, where do you begin? I love talking about myself. Who doesn't? Um, I think in the context of what's been happening recently, which is my role was made redundant. So after, as you mentioned, 25 years in corporate, 15 years at the same organization, my role was made redundant. Um, and that's given me a real chance to reflect on what I want to do with my life. I've been gifted an opportunity. The coaching that I've been doing for the last 5 years, has really been a bit of a side hustle and loved it. Now I have the opportunity to do it full time.
Well, also, I do believe that you did manifest that redundancy.
Yes, I did. I did. I've been thinking about it for a while. I think I was thinking a few years ago, how could I grow my coaching business and have a senior full-time role and be a present husband and present father? And I just couldn't manage to fit all that into my 24-hour days. And so I accepted that coaching would just be something I'd do as a side business. But I always hoped being made redundant and having the gift of a redundancy payment would just give me this opportunity to do it more full time. So yeah, looking forward to it. Exciting new stage of my life for me and my family. Nervous, excited.
Yeah. And I do remember some conversations that we had in relation to, really drilling into and connecting with that deepest desire within you
Mm-hmm.
around your purpose, that your actions followed in such a way that you did actually make your position redundant by training the people around you to fulfill the role that you were actually in.
Yes. Yes, I think one of the one of the things I've learned over the last 10 years, I mean, you spoke about 2014 and maybe we can come back to that, but since the direction changed in my life when I stopped having depressive thoughts and suicidal ideation and discovered a different way to think and way to live. And when I accepted that I wasn't leaving my corporate role anytime soon due to, Sydney mortgage and financial constraints and a family, I wanted to make my corporate role as fulfilling as possible. And I did that in two ways. One is I shifted roles internally, which was a little bit more values aligned for me. And then over the course of a couple of years, I created a role that enabled me to fulfill more of my needs and values. I really like training people, coaching people. Okay, I wasn't necessarily doing mindset coaching at work, but I was able to mentor and train and develop young talent to navigate their way through corporate and corporate politics. So I was able to maintain fulfillment in a role and help grow other people, which is important to me. And then, and develop processes and frameworks, which aren't the most exciting things to do, but knowing that if you develop processes and frameworks, other people can pick them up, learn from them, and then suddenly was in a situation where my role was no longer required. And that was bittersweet in some ways. I'd been there 15 years. There was an element of grief around it, especially because other members of the team were also made redundant
Mm.
because we'd done a great job and embedded a lot of what we do within the business. But yeah, it was a big shift. But since I've left, I've not looked back. It's been nice to have a different flow to my day that doesn't involve 7:30 a.m. or 9 p.m. meetings.
Yeah, beautiful.
Mm.
So take us back to what led you on the path to where you are today. So onto that personal development and those building of skills that you now have around supporting others in mindset.
Yes, yes, yes. It's funny looking back. Like you can talk about your life quickly in a few minutes, but we're talking 20, 30 years here of history. But in retrospect, and sometimes our memories can trick us and deceive us. I went back to the UK recently and I was confirming a few things with my mum about how I remember things when I was growing up. And some of it was true, and some of it she was like, I don't know where you've got that idea from, but that never happened. So, but I do remember vividly at like maybe 17, 18. So when I started university was the first time I would recognize that I had what people would label depression, mental health challenges, highs and lows, not wanting to get out of bed, etc. And started seeing a counselor at university. And then, that was just my journey up until my mid-30s, sort of 10 years ago, 2014. I didn't really know it was any different. We don't really talk about mental health a lot now anyway, but it's spoken about more than it used to be. It definitely wasn't in the north of England with the stoic sort of Northern Englishman. It wasn't something you really spoke about. It's seen as soft or weak. And so I think for me, when I'd go through my depressive bouts, I didn't think it was any different to anybody else. I just assumed everybody had those, want to curl up in bed at home and not have any energy for things. And I just thought that was part of my personality, and other people had the same type of personality. And didn't really think anything of it until I got a little bit older and started to learn more and started to put a label on sort of depression and mental health. But again, it was just my life. It's just I'd got used to the ebbs and flows and the highs and lows, and just learned to cope with it, deal with it, navigate through it. Saw therapists on and off, counselors on and off. I wouldn't say they didn't work for me because I don't really have an alternate path of not seeing them. So I can't say it didn't work for me, but what I can say is it didn't fix me, if you want to use that word. It didn't remove the depression. It just taught me how to deal with it, how to cope with it, how to live with it. And then you take your already full life with wife and work and football and social life, and then you throw a baby in the mix, less sleep, your relationship's not as close as it was in the early stages because the poor mum is just so tired then at that exact same time that Emma came along, my oldest, 10, she's just turned 10. I also got a new boss at work, Now, in retrospect, I can see this guy was a lovely guy, but in the moment, he wasn't the boss I'd hoped for, and my job changed a little bit, and I was struggling. So I didn't feel I could quit my job because of mortgages and a new baby. So the overwhelm got real, and that lived experience of the previous 10, 20 years of navigating the ebbs and flows and highs and lows. Well, this was probably as low as I'd been, and I hadn't had to navigate that before. And I'd say that was my lowest point in terms of thinking about suicidal ideation. I had that on and off over the years. Again, thought it was normal that most people sometimes think about jumping in front of a train at Wynyard when they've had a bad day. Didn't realize that wasn't the norm. Um, so, so yeah, and so that's the last suicidal thought I had back then. I remember it vividly, and it was around that time. I don't know if I manifested it, if it was just the universe helping me out, but I ended up going to a Tony Robbins event. I'd been to a Tony Robbins event a few years earlier with Amanda, my wife, and had a great time and taken on some of the learnings, but I hadn't really thought too much about it. And then got another opportunity to go in 2014 when things were bad for me. And that weekend at that event, I've never looked back since in terms of the fork in the road of how I think about life and mental health.
So, what was the catalyst for you in relation to being open to attending something like that? Because we've had conversations, you and I, in the past around, you know, how do we create opportunities for people who are in similar situations,
Yeah.
um, who aren't part of that thinking or network, to know that there are things that are accessible for them?
Yeah. It's a great question. It's something I've been pondering a lot the last couple of months because, I am developing a one-on-one program for coaching to help people with mental health challenges. And as part of that, you start thinking about, well, how do I attract people to that? Where are they at in their life? What sort of situation are they in? What will lead them to make a decision that now is the right time to seek an alternate way to deal with their mental health challenges? And it's tough because for me, I was at my lowest. Ideally, I don't want to work with clients at their lowest. You'd like to meet them earlier on their journey so it doesn't get that bad, and so then I think, well, did I know there was another way? Had I challenged my beliefs? Had anyone challenged me on my beliefs and how I think about mental health and my own responsibility for my thoughts and feelings? And I'd say no. Is that because I didn't speak about it openly? Perhaps. So, one thing that I've done over the last 10 years within my corporate job is I've spoken openly about my challenges. And people have come to me going, what? You were the life of the party. Like I knew you then. I had no idea you were thinking about that and behaving that way. And so I suppose taking that leadership to show that here's the journey I've been on. Here's another way if you want it, and I can help you with that. But you can't help people who don't want to be helped, and some people don't. And unfortunately, that's their journey, and you just have to accept that.
Mm. Yeah. What do you think are the social conditionings in relation to, I mean, because you're a male, I'm not a male, so I don't really have an in-depth understanding of your journey as a man
Yeah.
in the world, around the expectations. So as you were saying, you thought that everybody had the same kind of thinking and the
Yeah.
same similar experiences to you,
Yeah.
even though you had accessed counseling and psychology to
Yeah.
support you in that way. A lot of men don't.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's not a socially acceptable option for them because the rhetoric often is man up.
Oh, yes. Talk about a trigger word, a real man. What is a real man? Man up, and it's used so colloquially in society, and I know it's not meant with any sort of disparaging intent necessarily, but I do hear that. And as a father of a young son, and I'm always cognizant of the language I use around because I cry in front of my kids. I'm a bit of a crier. I remember crying at home and away when I was like 14. My wife and I and the kids, we were watching Survivor and was crying when someone got voted off. Like I'm happy to role model to my son that vulnerability and showing that sort of different aspects of emotion that we all have. However, I know that's not the norm, especially for men. I don't know how we change that. I volunteer for a men's mental health charity, and one of the focus of that group is to mentor young men, on late teens, early 20s on their life journey and try and support them earlier on the journey, not when they're at crisis. There's so many men's groups. I was driving to Dubbo, we went to the zoo a couple of months back, and I think I saw a couple of men's sheds around. I think there's quite a lot of these men's groups popping up. And, also, I think, and we can digress, but they all seem to be a little bit underground, not as well known. And I know we're living in a time where we're looking for gender diversity, and that's important. As father of a daughter, it's something I'm very aware of. But at the same time, I don't want to suppress the needs that men have also. I think mental health is a challenge for men and women.
Mm.
However, sometimes it feels like some of the men's mental health issues can be a little bit sort of off to the side. And there's plenty of women's groups, women's in superannuation, women in banking. The men's groups, as people would say, men's groups have existed for a long time. I understand that, but there's still men's needs that are required in other aspects, not necessarily in finance, but mental health is a great example. And how we bring that more to light. There was an SBS documentary talking about this very subject a couple of weeks ago, which is worth watching. I think it was called Bromance. But yeah,
Yes.
there's these pockets popping up everywhere of great ideas of just men, probably like myself, have had their own lived experience and are trying to help others. Um, I mean, I'm not only. It's funny. I'm not. I don't focus on men specifically, even though I'm a man and that's my journey. I'd say most of my clients have been women,
Mm.
but I don't target women specifically. I would love more male clients. Now, whether that's just me and blokes aren't attracted to me as a coach, I don't know. Or is it just there's not as many men out there looking for that support?
Yeah, I mean it could, to me it's probably a bit of both.
Mm,
So I have a lot of men's men, like tradesmen who are
right.
clients, who come to me as
Yeah.
clients. And I think some of that relates to the fact that I do come from a corporate environment.
Yeah.
I do have the ability or do present oftentimes as quite masculine in my
Mm-hmm.
energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so although because I'm a woman, they feel that it's still a safe space.
Yes.
Um, but it's interesting that I get very masculine men
Right.
to me in my practice. Having said that, I think that there is a lot of fear around being able to access that softer side
Yeah.
and to be vulnerable, that there is a fear of judgment from other men
Interesting.
without recognizing that that's why you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
is because you can have that recognition about both the masculine and the feminine,
Yes.
and the requirement to balance those to be really whole as a man
Yes.
or as a woman.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I was just reflecting. I made a post on LinkedIn when I left my role, as you do, just sort of saying thank you and talking about what I'll be doing next for a while. And I got quite a few I got some very humbling responses to that post, which I was really touched by. And but I got a lot of private messages from people, and many of those private messages, as I'm thinking about it, were from men, and
Mm.
whether that was just their style and wanted to private message, or whether they didn't want to say what they said publicly, because because as I said before, people were shocked when they, found out about my journey. So,
Mm.
and I think when you're in corporate, you build a corporate career with personas, with facades, with a reputation, and so unwinding that at a later date takes a little bit of courage to come out and say, well, actually, I'm struggling. I mean, I remember I used to play a lot of football, and when I was wanting to take days off work, and this was pre-work from home and pre-COVID and things, and if I wanted to take a day off work because I was having a mental health challenge, it was like I'd typically on a Monday morning, and typically it'd be like I'd sprain my ankle on the weekend type things that I'd be saying. I didn't feel comfortable back then, 10, 15 years ago, saying just having a mental health day, whereas that narrative appears to have changed. I was very supportive of my team when I was working. If they just said, I just need a mental health day, awesome, take it. It didn't have to tell fibs or stories or make it stomach bugs or something physical. That it was just as credible and to have a mental health day.
Yeah, I think there's a real conditioning that needs to be open, like the narrative needs to be very open in relation to for men, to be able to really talk about openly and honestly the things that they really need,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to living in alignment with the things that they're told they should be,
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
think very different things.
Yeah. And we're generalizing obviously about men and women, but we're talking masculine energy, as you mentioned yourself before, and feminine energy, which I have in abundance too. And it's I mean, I do find that when I'm coaching clients with a strong masculine energy, I find that a different sort of challenge because they're very um in their head, very want to challenge the detail of what you're saying if it conflicts with their beliefs. Whereas the more feminine energy, which again tends to be the female clients, they a little bit more accepting and trusting of just, okay, I'll take a leap of faith with this process. I'll take a leap of faith with what you're saying about how the mind works, even though it contradicts what I've thought before. I'll take the leap of faith and they get the results. But I have found a lot of the masculine energy in the men really challenge. And it's like, it's the idea of accepting that maybe the world's a little bit different to what they thought. They're not always ready for, and until they get like me to that pain point. I mean, at that point, I thought I knew it all, right? I thought I knew it all. That's how I grew up. I know it all, that sort of attitude. And so when I got to that low and I went to that Tony event and I saw things in a different way, that was a massive paradigm shift for me and very humbling. And that curiosity now for knowledge and realizing that what I know today, I feel confident in. However, in a year's time, I may believe something else that's different to what I believe today, and that's just part of growth, and being flexible, I think.
Yeah. And I think if there's a lack of motivation, a lack of excitement, and a lack of curiosity, then that's actually a pretty good indicator that thinking needs to shift,
Yes,
and
yes.
that, that there is potentially more to discover. And there are certain phases that we go through as part of our growing, our maturing, and our development, where all of the thinking that we experience is appropriate.
Mm,
But as we get older, there has, for us to be truly content, for us to be truly fulfilled and to be happy, it needs to expand at some point.
yes.
So, when we're teenagers, there's a certain level of thinking. Then when we go into our professional lives and we're at that entry level, maybe up until 30 or 35, there's another type of thinking. Then we become parents, and then there's a different type of focus and a different type
Yes.
of thinking. And
Yes.
then as our children get older, there becomes a time where there is an opportunity, and in actual fact, often a need for that thinking to change again and to become more expansive
Yeah.
as we mature and we grow.
Yeah.
I think there can be a tendency for women and for men to get stuck during that phase
Yes.
around, well, it's what I've always done, so it's what I need to continue to do. I'll
Yeah.
just do this until I retire, and
Hmm.
then I'll have a chance to live. Um, and I think one of the issues that has more recently come into play is the continuation of the extension of the age of retirement.
Yes.
So the amount of time that we have to tolerate that the status quo, that by the time our children leave home and we become empty nesters, we realize that as we haven't evolved and our partnerships haven't evolved during that period, that's a really inconvenient time to be hitting rock bottom
Yes. Yes. Very much so.
because marriages break up.
Yes.
People get stuck in the doldrum of, the robotic, automatic behaviors of, going to work and coming
Yes.
home and cooking dinner and, or whatever the routine becomes.
Yes.
Could
Yes.
involve drinking, could involve, negative behaviors that aren't
Yeah.
really helping in
Mm.
relation to managing what is happening for us or creating something different for ourselves. And, you know, I think that the creation of the men sheds have been a really good thing. But
Yeah.
I hear so many men say, I've been meaning to, but it's outside of the routine.
Yes.
So then it becomes difficult to break the routine to access. There can
Yes.
be, as we've talked about, a lot of fear
Mm.
around, well, what does it mean if I go to that? What does it say about me? What if it's not what I want it to be?
Yes.
Or those sorts of things. And I think the same thing happens for women,
Mm.
because as they are getting towards that point as well, if things do break up in their relationships, it's just like, oh, well, now it's a whole new different world. And there's a whole lot of shame for both. We weren't able to make it work, whatever, whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it creates a lot of isolation.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's funny as you were talking then, it's something that resonated with me was how I felt trapped in my corporate life when things got really bad. I didn't think I could quit my job, even though I was struggling with my boss and the job back then. And obviously having bills to pay and a new baby and feeling trapped. And that's not a feeling that was very comfortable. And I suspect most people don't like feeling that way. But I also know many people probably do feel that way, where they're going in to a job that they don't love. Maybe they're in a relationship they feel trapped in because financially or because of expectations or perceptions of shame and all this feeling of being trapped. And you've got me thinking, how do you avoid that feeling of being trapped? And one thing that comes to mind for me is I trapped myself because I got myself on a career path that paid a certain amount of money, which led to me buying a certain level of house and a certain mortgage. And that's different for everybody. However, I got on that career path because of expectations of parents or um, judging other people's lifestyles, so chasing status or chasing money or trying to fulfill things I didn't think I had as a child. So therefore, well, I know if I go into finance, I can get a good salary, etc. And then once you're in, it's tricky to get out when you've got these obligations. And I think about how I parent my children. I'm consistently saying to them, just do what you love. Just do what you love. I don't believe at this point that I'll be that parent who's like, you must get top grades, you must go to uni, unless that's what they want. Whatever they choose will be right for them. Because at least if it's something that they love, they're not going to have that feeling of being trapped every day doing it. They're going to be inspired to do it because it's what they want to do. And whereas in the old model used to be you sort of suck up your 9 to 5, and if you could find one you liked, great. If you couldn't, you suck it up for the salary, and then you spend your money on the stuff you enjoy on an evening or a weekend. I don't believe it has to be that way. With the coaching and the work that you do, that you can have a role and a job that's inspiring for you, that's just an integrated part of your life. You don't need the work James and then the home James, and they're two different people.
Mm,
Authentic leadership is something that gets thrown around and something I've endeavored to develop the last few years, which is I like to perceive that I'm the same James at home as I am at work. That wasn't always the case. Sometimes they were two different people.
mm.
And that's draining and
Yeah,
exhausting.
absolutely. Yeah, I remember when I left my corporate role and my family were just going, well, now you need to get another job just like that job. And I was going, no, no, I've left that job because I don't want to do the 60-hour weeks. I was a
Yeah.
single mother of four children. I was really struggling to balance, you know, my masculine role in the
Yes.
workplace with being a mother, but also being a single mother, needing to balance also the masculine and the feminine in the home also.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was literally killing me.
Yeah.
So then I went into teaching and completely changed my career, as you know, at the
Mm,
age of like 45. And now that I don't have any work days.
mm.
If I work on a Saturday or Sunday, that's because I've got stuff I want to do that relates to my business or my
Yeah.
clients or whatever it may be, or
Yeah.
the training that I'm delivering, but it doesn't feel like work.
No.
It, like you're saying, it's a really integrated part of who I am
Yes.
and what I choose to do, which lights me up. I
Yeah.
still, I parent my children better now
Yes.
than I did previously. I don't have to juggle between work, children, and my relationship. They're all one and the same thing now.
Yeah.
And there's ample time for everyone,
Yeah.
including myself.
Yeah.
Whereas before, there was only time for everybody else in my world,
Not
except for
yourself.
myself.
Yeah. I love that. And we're both, NLP trained and hypnotherapy and focus on the unconscious mind. But you said it yourself unconsciously, I'm sure before you if you want to work on a weekend, the word want, you want to do it. How many times if people said, I have to go into the office on Saturday, I have to, that's an obligation. That's something that you don't, when you're saying, I want to do it, I love to do it, I choose to do it, that's a very different place to be in your mind, in your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mm,
it's about feeling empowered and everything becomes a choice,
yes.
in your life. So, if someone says, can you do this for me? It's like, well, am I going to choose that or am I going
Yeah.
to choose not that? And feeling empowered and knowing that whatever choice you make, you are coming from a place of love and respect, then the outcome is irrelevant.
Yeah. I love that.
So I do remember you telling me once that when
Oh
you
dear.
went to your first Tony Robbins event,
Yes.
it was opportunistic. It wasn't something that you would have chosen for yourself. I believe you were invited. Is that
Yeah, I
right?
think I think a mate of mine was going, and it was like a two. I wouldn't even say like a close friend, like an acquaintance at a work dinner was going, and I'd been to a Tony event a few years prior and had really enjoyed it. And he had like if you early bird 2 for 1 ticket, and there was just an opportunity to go, and I remember enjoying it the first time a few years earlier, and it was great for Amanda and I's relationship, and some of the sort of state management and things I learned there had stuck.
Mm,
But I hadn't really thought about it much since, and so then it just serendipitous that I was having dinner. He had a 2 for 1 ticket. I was in this mental health place where I was like, hey, why not? I remember I went before and it was okay, and I mean, it's crazy to think. I mean, I went to that Unleash the Power Within, and then signed up for the next program and the next program, and ended up becoming a senior leader for Tony, and traveling to San Diego and Fiji and doing so many events, and then that led me to learning NLP and hypnosis and training in those where you and I met, and yeah, and then that journey's continued, and now I follow John DiMartini, which is another personal development coach and philosophy, and so my coaching is just sort of a synthesis of all I've learned over the last 10 years. Like I was doing the maths on how much money I've spent, and it's well into six figures over the last 10 years, and It's like, okay, well, my coaching courses, my coaching programs are going to help people shortcut that amount of money. I'm going to take the best bits
Mhm.
of all the things that I've done and the things that made a difference to me on my journey and have helped my clients and sort of say, hey, if I can in a few months teach you what I've learned over the last 10 years, I think I can help people.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
because that's your drive.
Yes,
That's your
absolutely.
motivation.
Yeah.
So, are you able to share a little bit about your individual coaching and your group coaching
Well,
program?
at a high level, yes, but as you know, I'm sort of just developing a few things at the moment. I realize as a coach, like I confidently can say, Jen, and you've worked with me a long time, I believe any client who presented to me that I could help with any problem, and I mean that any inner problem. Like I believe that inner change creates outer transformation. I believe we're responsible for our outer world, and therefore, if you want this to change, you need to change in here. So that's my core philosophy, and I honestly believe if someone comes to me with any problem, I can work with them. That being said, what I also know is that that doesn't market very well. It's very hard to be a generalist coach. And so and that's why I've really started thinking about the business aspect of my business and focusing on the mental health challenges, the journey I've been on. Doesn't mean if someone comes to me, I can't help them with their relationship challenges or to quit smoking or other things that I've done before. But my primary focus is going to be on those people who've got the challenging sort of mental health, maybe typically high achievers, maybe they're feeling burnout and overwhelmed. Maybe they've got that work persona and the home persona and that inner conflict's getting too much for them. And the focus really is starting premise for me is clear out the emotional baggage,
Mm.
stories we've got from childhood, the perceived traumatic experience we've gone through that we still use as a crutch either to hinder us or to connect with others on and clear all of that, release those past perceived voids. And once you do that, then you can sort of then design your future. So it's clear the past, design your future is the simplistic approach, helping people understand themselves. If people want to work with me long term, it's because they come back with a new problem that we haven't worked on, a new situation. I don't want people who need to see me every week for 10 years. That's not my model. If someone goes through my program, maybe they're miserable at work and overwhelmed and they go through my program, I don't want them to have to come back. I want them to go through it, have the change, and have the tools that they can then get on with their life. If they want to come back again, brilliant. But if they come back with the same problem, I don't feel I've done my job properly, and so that's sort of my focus. Maybe that's not a great business model. I don't know, but that's how I view it.
Uh, I think that that is the business model. And I think that that is probably what attracted us to the modalities that we utilize as
Mm,
well.
yeah.
Um, because we've both had the experience of going to other models where we're taught to manage,
Hmm.
to deal with, to cope, rather than to clear the actual issue itself.
Yes.
Whereas our business is the business of clearing the problem and resolving the
Yeah.
problem, not managing the problem.
Yeah. That's a great language frame, but yeah, I like that. Clearing the problem, not just managing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what I
So,
was doing with my depression. I think I said that earlier, right? Like with the
yes.
counselors, I was just managing and learning to live with the challenges as opposed to clearing it and moving on, which is what happened when I started doing NLP and hypnotherapy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, if and so I totally resonate and feel exactly the same way around. I don't think I've ever had anyone come back to me with the same problem. And I'm
That's
pretty
great.
sure you haven't either.
No, I'd be disappointed if
Because,
they did.
they'd still be our clients if we hadn't cleared their problem, because that's what we guarantee
Yeah,
when they first
absolutely.
come and see us.
Absolutely.
And we've got some really good ways of ensuring the problem is gone as part of the processes that we use as
Hmm.
well. So, once we do the clearing of the negative emotions and the limiting beliefs and, integrate any conflicting parts, then we know we've achieved the outcome they're looking for by ensuring that they can't run the strategy for doing the problem.
Exactly.
Right?
And that doesn't mean they won't have any future problems and emotional charges arise, but they will be different, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so then absolutely, I go and get a full clean out in a specific context every
Mm.
18 months
Yeah.
because we're only clearing stuff from the past. We're not clearing stuff from the future because that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of the things that I always recommend to my students and my clients also is once is never enough. We have a number of different contexts
Hmm.
in life, so
Yeah.
we've got family, relationships, career, spiritual development, health and fitness, and um, personal development. They're the six.
Hmm.
So if we're only working in a specific context, then we've only fixed the problem. It does go cross-contextual, but the focus has been in that context.
Hmm.
So there will be other contexts where other issues will show up where I would suggest that people would come back to clear a different context.
Yeah.
So, but it's simply the same thing as focusing on our health. As we age, our nutritional requirements become different.
Yes.
The way that we go to the gym and the exercises we do at the gym also needs to shift
Yes.
as we age. So I don't see it any different to that. It's a maintenance kind of thing.
Yes.
We invest in our health, we invest in our physiological, so we also need to invest in our emotional and our psychological.
Yeah. Agree. I think one of the um, challenges around what we do in terms of demonstrating the value to people who aren't aware of the services we offer and what coaching can bring is the tangibility of outcomes. You can say to someone, I'll help you lose 2 kilograms over the next month if you come to my training sessions twice a week, etc. Putting a price on someone's mental health and saying you can reduce overwhelm, reduce anxiety. These are all true statements, but it can be hard to sometimes turn that into a tangible outcome that people resonate with. Hence why most of my clients have been via referrals because they've seen their friends get a result and then they come to me. But in terms of how you sell and advertise that and sort of demonstrate those, I will get you 10 LinkedIn leads without paid ads in the next week. That type of offer that you see in the market. It's very hard in sort of life coaching and mindset coaching.
Absolutely. And also because there is no generic template
No,
either.
everyone's different, right?
Um, that's right. And
Mm.
and I mean, I think that it also is one of the ad, ad, advantages and one of the additional values in relation to the work that we do is that we work according to the client's outcome, not to a generic
Yes.
outcome.
Yes.
And the way that that is going to be measured is through a negotiation around what is once you don't have the anxiety or have the overwhelm or whatever it is that the problem is, what will you be able to
To do.
do
Yes.
that you can't do whilst you have that going on?
Yes.
And then that allows us to be able to measure it in a much more tangible way rather than, well, I'll feel better or I'll feel less stressed or, something that is a bit kind of etheric,
Yes.
really.
Agree. Agree.
Because we as coaches must be able to measure it in something that is observable
Mm.
rather than the word of the client that we're working with.
Yes.
So if they say, well, I can't, I don't, I'm not okay being seen, I, um, I can't do Facebook Lives or whatever it may be in
Mhm.
relation to promoting my business because of all of these limiting beliefs about who I am in the world or who I should be or my value or whatever it is, then the evidence to us is, okay, well, now that we've removed all of that, I want you to tag me in your Facebook Lives because my
Yeah,
expectation is you will be doing them now because you told me that's what you couldn't do. You're
yeah,
telling me that the problem has now gone. So now give me the evidence of that.
yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love that evidence. And one of my the things I say on my website is, my coaching is where support meets challenge. Like as a coach, you're there to support and help people, but you want to challenge people as well because that's where the growth is. And so, having them provide evidence and tag you in the Facebook lives puts the accountability on the client. And that's really important. I want clients to feel that they can operate without me, that I'm not a crutch for them to see every week on the couch,
Mm,
but I'm somebody that they can then go on and operate without me in their lives because they've learned the skills and they've cleared their baggage, etc. So yeah,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I love being able to see that,
yes,
and see them, take back their power,
yes,
which they had previous lost their connection to or sight of because
yeah,
they always have it.
yeah.
Sometimes it just becomes hidden by the additional layers of,
Layers, the masks, yeah.
yeah.
Fundamentally, my goal is to help people be authentically them true selves. Now, I know that sounds sort of quite nebulous and cliche, but I think when you're being authentic and in your true self, which is how we operate at home with our kids, in our family, you just are who you are. They see the best of you, the worst of you. If you can operate like that across your whole spectrum of your life, that's such a freeing place to be rather than having to operate with filters and personas. It's just exhausting. So yeah, ultimately allowing people just have that belief in their own self-worth that they're good enough just who they are, with makeup, without makeup, you know, being vulnerable, being firm, just allowing people just to be. That's the sort of goal. That's my journey. And I'd say that I've improved in that area over the last 10 years, still
Mm.
improving. But yeah, I definitely think I can help people go on that journey too.
Yeah. And I think that's where the power is because that flip-flopping between the different masks and the different
Yeah.
personas, over time, it becomes so exhausting
Yeah.
that it has a tendency to bleed
Yeah.
into the other areas. So we might be the, tough nut at work, and then we come home and we find ourselves being the tough nut at home, and then have to kind of step back and
Yeah.
shed the skin.
Yeah. Agree. Agree.
And yeah, so yeah, I think it's really important. I think authenticity is the key to personal power.
Yeah.
And I think it's also something that is required to be able to uncover what the deeper purpose is that lies underneath.
Yeah. Yeah, that connection with purpose, your why, the Simon Sinek sort of phrase, but understanding your why, your true purpose, that's where the energy comes. You don't need a rocket up your backside to do things that you're inspired by, that's aligned with your vision or your mission. Um, I was thinking, I know we have to probably wrap up, but I was thinking before, you look at your kids, right? Like my kids are 10 and 8, starting to see it with a 10-year-old, but up until maybe 6 months ago, they are authentic. They are just themselves. There's no filter. They just do what they want, say what they want, scream when they want, wake you up on a Sunday morning when they want. You're like
Mm,
and then something happens. And then that's when the masks and the layers, probably societal expectations, school, TV, who knows where it comes from, even parental expectations. But it's just, and then you look at really old people. Like I went back to the UK and my grand's 90 and bedridden. She's authentic as well. He doesn't
yeah.
filter, and something happens in that middle phase where early phase that we sort of lose our authenticity, or many people do. And then you get to in your mid 30s, your 40s, like me, and then you're trying to find it again. Like,
Mm,
how can we help the kids keep their authenticity through school and into their 20s rather than putting on the layers and then spending thousands and thousands of dollars over their 30s and 40s trying to find it again.
Yeah, trying to unravel. And I've heard that, I don't know who said it, but I often recite it, which is we spend the first half of our life collecting things that aren't ours, and the second half of our life trying to shed them.
Yeah, that resonates.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, James, any final words of wisdom?
No final words of wisdom. I think you saying that before reminded me of, probably going to butcher it, but there's a quote that, you know, we have two lives, and the second one starts when we realize we only have one. And I think,
Yeah, I love
and
that
I
too.
think there's an element of it happens to us all. I'm sure you maybe get to an age where you realize, as far as we know, this is it, right? There's a finite time on the planet, and for me, becoming a parent was that moment where I realized, okay, and therefore making the most of it. Making the most of it for me is by being yourself and being authentic. So, if I can help people find that sooner, that would
Mm,
be great.
yeah, and what a difference it'll make
Yeah.
as well, as far as the role modeling of their own children and,
Yes.
our next generation. Because I mean, our children are the next generation of leaders, whether we like it or not.
No comment on that.
Oh,
Brilliant.
James, as always, it's such a pleasure to
Thanks,
spend
Jen.
time with you. So I'll put your website and your social links in the comments of
Yes, definitely put my website on
the
there. Yeah.
podcast. Definitely.
Yeah.
So whatever you send to me, I will pop in the comments for the podcast so people know where to find you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No, an absolute pleasure. You're an incredible coach. You're an incredible trainer, and you're an incredible mentor and an incredible friend.
Oh, thank you, Jen.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know that everyone that you have worked with and will work with will get incredible benefit from being part of your world and being in receivership of your support.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. All righty. Thanks, everyone,
See you.
for watching, and look forward to seeing you next time.